Prior to discussing the methods for achieving sweetness and joy in ibadah, it's essential to understand what sweetness in ibadah really is. Sweetness and delight in ibadah refers to the sense of inner peace when performing ibadah. It's the heart's happiness when the Muslim performs a ibadah, any type of ibadah. Sweetness and delight in ibadah is the sensation of being energized to engage in ibadah. It's the desire and feeling to remain immersed in ibadah indefinitely. It's longing to prolong, for example, the salah, whether it's the nafil salah or fard salah or qiyam al-layl. It's the reluctance to set aside the mushaf once you start reciting it. Sweetness in ibadah is what some refer to as the Jannah of this dunya. This feeling varies from individual to individual depending on the strength or weakness of one's iman. Look at the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in ibadah. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anh related that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam recited Surah Al-Baqarah, then Surah An-Nisa, then Surah Ali Imran in one rak'ah. And it wasn't speed reading, because the hadith actually specifies that he recited those verses unhurried. On top of reciting those verses and those surah and those ajza with contemplation, on top of all that, whenever he passed verses that referred to the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he glorified him. If he recited verses about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be begged, he would beg him. When he recited verses dealing with the protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he sought Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection. And it wasn't a random night in the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam's life that he did so. It was a consistent habit throughout his life sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because there's other narrations like that which is narrated by Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. Look at the Salaf, the remarkable accounts of the Salaf, and their acts of worship are extensive. It's inspiring to read about their unwavering commitment to Salah, for example, and the countless long nights that they devoted standing in Salah, along with the performance of the various other ibadat. Mu'adh radiallahu anh cried on his deathbed. He expressed sorrow on his deathbed. And that sorrow wasn't about leaving his family or wealth or any dunya matter. He was crying on his deathbed because he was going to miss standing in salah during the cold nights. Because he's going to miss being thirsty from fasting during the hot days. You have to feel the sweetness of ibadah to say something like that in such a predicament. There's similar narrations by Abu Darda and Ibn Umar and others radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Their ability to endure hardships and the long nights that they spent in ibadah shows that there was something deep within them that motivated them to engage in ibadah without feeling tired or getting bored. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad used to say, when the sun sets, I feel happy, because the darkness gives me a chance to be alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when dawn breaks, I feel sad, because that's when the people start coming back around again. His delight was in spending time alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not with people. Most today would say something opposite to what he said. Ibadah got them to forget their worries and their physical discomfort, because they felt the sweetness and delight of that ibadah. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the men he raised, they found such joy in their ibadah that it kept them from noticing the pain in their feet, even when they became swollen from the strain of standing for so long in ibadah. They felt comfort in being alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and happiness in ibadah that can't be compared to any worldly pleasure or desire. Ibadah brought them a sense of peace and a calm heart. They felt that way because that's the way the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised them. Nowadays, Muslims are encouraged to perform ibadat. Parents, for example, motivate their children to perform ibadat. They emphasize the importance of performing the ibadat, and they emphasize the seriousness of neglecting the ibadat. However, they often overlook the necessity of teaching them how to experience the joy and sweetness of those ibadat. Many Muslims today perform salah like the pecking of a rooster without feeling any joy or delight in that salah. Some are eager to complete the salah before it actually begins. A lot of people fast or perform the other various ibadat like qiyam without feeling its sweetness and without feeling connected to it, without having a bond with it. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't raise his Sahaba like that. He guided them to establish a connection between the ibadat and the heart prior to the commencement of the physical actions of the ibadat. This is a crucial element that we're missing out on today. When the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Bilal to make iqamah for salah, he didn't just say get up and make iqamah. He was instructing him on concepts that went much deeper than the physical salah itself. Ya Bilal, aqim as-salah. Arihna biha. Sunan Abu Dawood. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Bilal, get up and perform iqamah and give us comfort by it. Give us comfort by it. Arihna biha. Salah is comfort. He was teaching them that salah should be a comfort zone. That's the sweetness and delight of ibadah. Salah and ibadah aren't just about the physical movements and the words we utter. He said, arihna biha. Ibadat should also bring peace and comfort to our hearts. They should ease our worries and bring happiness to our souls. That's why when anything distresses a Muslim, he should find his relief in salah and in the other various ibadat. That's the sweetness of ibadah that we seek to attain. To further deepen this meaning in the hearts of the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ instructed them in many various ways. For example, he said, أَقْرَبُ مَا يَكُونُ الْعَبْدُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ وَهُوَ سَاجِدٌ. Sahih Muslim, he said, the nearest a servant is to his Lord is when he's prostrated. Contemplating that attains one delight in his ibadah. Some strictly adhere to every single tiny sunnah of the salah. That's great. That's how it should be. But then they might miss out on truly experiencing the sweetness of the salah. The same goes for siyam and the other ibadat. It's important to teach how to attain the sweetness of the ibadat, like salah, just as thoroughly as we teach the physical and verbal aspects of those ibadat. Feeling the sweetness of the ibadah impacts more than just the act of the ibadah itself. When someone grows up finding happiness and joy in ibadah, they're less likely to cross the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they're alone. If the shaitan tries to tempt them, they quickly remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and regain their iman. A generation that's not raised on feeling the sweetness of ibadah is a weak generation. It's a generation that will easily be swayed by temptations. It's a struggling generation that will get dragged into this materialistic dunya. When we raise ourselves and our students and our children to feel the joy of worship, it'll replace and counter the shaitanic pleasure of sins. A sin may appear to be pleasurable to some. The shaitan and the nafs can create an illusion of enjoyment around sinful acts. A heart that's spiritually troubled may even find some thrill in some of the sins. But when you experience the sweetness of the ibadah, when you bow down in salah and feel the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you understand Allah's love and kindness, when you realize His generosity and mercy, when you grasp all of this, your heart feels the pleasure and sweetness in ibadah, and that increases one's iman. Now, the consequence of that is that when there's a sinful thought, when the enticing whisper of temptation arises in your mind, or if the opportunity to sin presents itself, you quickly turn to the various types of ibadat. Why? Because now, with that proper spiritual upbringing, you now find genuine joy and pleasure in engaging in these ibadat. Joy that's exceeding and surpassing the shaitanic pleasure that's in sins.